people think that goes away in April with the heat.
Welcome to Planet America. I'm John Barrett.
And I'm Chazza Jadallo.
This week, America's coronavirus death toll passed 200,000, but it's the death of one woman from cancer that's dominating the news.
Tonight, the legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the fight to replace her, and Trump's lasting impact on America's courts.
The 2020 presidential race has been turned on its head, at least for now. An election dominated by the coronavirus pandemic, the economic devastation it's caused, and the president's handling of both is now focused on the future of the United States Supreme Court. 87-year-old Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a progressive icon and fighter for gender equality, died last Friday, triggering a political battle over her replacement. For President Trump, in the final months of his first term, it offers the opportunity to leave an indelible mark, regardless of the outcome of November's election. Here's how he heard the news on the tarmac of an airport in Minnesota, moments after finishing a rally there. That's why, incongruously, Elton John is playing in the background.
She just died? Wow. I didn't know that. You're telling me now for the first time. She led an amazing life. What else can you say? She was an amazing woman. Whether you agreed or not, she was an amazing woman who led an amazing life. I'm actually sad to hear that. I am sad to hear that. Thank you very much.
Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden, who presided over Ginsburg's confirmation hearing back in 1993, says her replacement should be chosen by the winner of the election.
Voters should pick the president, and the president should pick the justice for the Senate to consider. This was the position of the Republican Senate took in 2016, when there were almost 10 months to go before the election. That's the position the United States Senate must take today.
Yeah, good luck with that, Joe.
We won.
The president is making his intentions clear.
And we have an obligation as the winners to pick who we want.
He's ready to fill Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat, and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is falling in line.
To understand the stakes, not just for an election, which is 42 days away, but also for the future functioning of the court and Congress, we'd better break it down.
Break it down.
Nice. First, a quick primer on the United States Supreme Court itself. Justices are nominated by the President but have to be confirmed by the Senate. Nominees usually reflect the ideology of the President, so Democrats tend to nominate more progressive candidates to the court, Republicans more conservative ones. Justices are there to rule on law, not ideology, but generally speaking, conservative judges will take a narrower, literal view of the original intent of the Constitution. There are 9 seats on the Supreme Court now. There is no limit on how long a justice can serve. Some retire, others die. And here they are. Chief Justice John Roberts, appointed by President George W. Bush in 2005. Then the Associate Justices, Clarence Thomas, appointed by George H.W. Bush back in 1991. The now vacant seat of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was appointed by President Clinton in 1993. Stephen Breyer, who was also appointed by Clinton in 1994. Samuel Alito, appointed by George W. Bush in 2006. Sonia Sotomayor, appointed by President Obama in 2009. Elena Kagan, appointed by Obama in 2010. Neil Gorsuch, appointed by President Trump in 2017. And finally, Brett Kavanaugh, also appointed by President Trump in 2018. So, based on their judicial outlook, before Ginsburg's death, of the 9 justices, 5 were conservatives and 4 were progressives. So, Chief Justice John Roberts often cast the deciding vote. But if President Trump fills Ginsburg's seat, that conservative majority will grow to 6, with 3 progressives. But Chaz, it's not a rubber stamp. Presidents don't always get their nominee through the Senate, especially if the party doesn't have the majority in the Senate.
That is absolutely true. There's nothing straightforward about this. There have been 14 vacancies in history that occurred in an election year before the election. 7 of them occurred when the President and the Senate were from the same party, like now. In 6 of those vacancies, the President nominated a replacement before the election, and 5 of those 6 nominations were successful. But as you say, John, there were also 7 vacancies when the Senate and President were from different parties, like under Obama in 2016. In 4 of those 7 vacancies, the President nominated the replacement before the election, and in only 1 of those 4 nominations Were they successful? So you might think history suggests that Trump should just plough ahead because his party holds the Senate. But a lot of those nominations were right at the beginning of the year. Look at this. These are the vacancies that opened up after May in election years. There's only 6 of them in history. And this vacancy is the 3rd closest to the election. But notice the presidents with vacancies opening up 22 days, 27 days and 67 days before the election all delayed their replacement nominations till after the election, with mixed results, I might add. Every situation is different, of course, but it seems to me that the closest analogue to today was when Roger Taney died in 1864, 27 days before the election, and Abraham Lincoln held the nomination till after the election, despite his party holding the Senate. Of course, that was 19 days closer to the election than this is. But on the other hand, voting has already begun in this election. So people will interpret history how it suits them.
Yeah, as is always the case. And the most important bit of history to this actually only dates back to February 2016. That's when Conservative Justice Antonin Scalia died unexpectedly, and in March, with 10 months left in his presidency, Barack Obama announced what appeared to be a fairly uncontroversial replacement.
Today I am nominating Chief Judge Merrick Brian Garland to join the Supreme Court.
But facing the loss of their then Conservative majority on the court, Republicans dug in, using their Senate majority to block the confirmation process altogether. There wasn't even a hearing. Instead, Senate leader Mitch McConnell argued the American people should decide.
I think it's safe to say there will not be hearings or votes. I think it is also safe to say the next president, whoever that may be, is going to be the person who chooses the next Supreme Court justice.
Now, that was an extraordinary move, refusing to even give a sitting president's nominee a preliminary hearing. But Mitch McConnell had the power to do it, and he did it. And it turned the election into a referendum on the future makeup of the court. Republican nominee Donald Trump then announced a list of judges he'd pick from, and he hammered the issue throughout the campaign.
The Supreme Court, it's what it's all about. Our country is it's just so imperative that we have the right justices.
And that from Trump was a political masterstroke. Plenty of Republican voters didn't like Trump's style, but they still preferred who he would put on the court than Hillary Clinton's likely picks. Conservatives closed ranks, and Trump won. 4 years later, and the shoe is now on the other foot, and what we're seeing from many of the same Republicans looks an awful lot like rank hypocrisy, Chaz, although plenty of Democrats have changed their tune as well.
They certainly have. But let's start with Mitch McConnell back in 2016. His first statement about Justice Scalia's death said, "The American people should have a voice in the selection of the next Supreme Court justice." So, of course, now that Chuck Schumer wants to delay Ginsburg's replacement, he immediately quoted that back at Mitch McConnell. But Schumer's got his own awkward trail of tweets going on about how many justices had been confirmed in election years and imploring the Senate to do their job, get confirming. And to be fair to Mitch McConnell, back in 2016, he did actually often mention the fact the Senate and President were from different parties.
Look to history. We haven't filled a vacancy created during a presidential election year in 80 years. You'd have to go back to 1888, Grover Cleveland in the White House, to find the last time a Senate controlled by the opposite party of the president confirmed a justice in a presidential election year.
And that's obviously not the case today. By contrast, though, Joe Biden has really been on a rhetorical journey, from being against election year confirmations in 1992.
It is my view that if a Supreme Court justice resigns tomorrow or within the next several weeks, or resigns at the end of the summer, President Bush should consider following the practice of a majority of his predecessors and not name a nominee until after the November election is completed.
To in 2016, insisting that he'd been grievously misunderstood.
Article 2 of the Constitution clearly states, whenever there is a vacancy in one of the courts created by the Constitution itself, the Supreme Court of the United States, the President shall, not may, the President shall appoint someone to fill the vacancy with the advice and consent of the United States Senate. And advice and consent includes consulting and voting.
To now going back to demanding that the president not appoint a Ginsburg replacement till after the election in the clip that John just played. Talking about Ginsburg, she had an interesting view back in 2016 as well.
The president is elected for 4 years, not 3 years, so the power that he has in year 3 continues into year 4, and maybe some members of the Senate will wake up and appreciate that that's how it should be.
No deathbed request for the president to hold off there. But the king of hypocrisy is undoubtedly Lindsey Graham. This was 2016.
I want you to use my words against me. If there's a Republican president in 2016 and a vacancy occurs in the last year of the first term, you can say, Lindsey Graham said, let's let the next president, whoever it might be, make that nomination, and you could use my words against me and you'd be absolutely right.
Then in 2018...
If an opening comes in the last year of President Trump's term and the primary process is started, we'll wait to the next election.
Take note of that clip's date, October the 3rd, 2018. Then this year, he's backtracked, saying Merrick Garland was a different situation because the president and Senate were in different parties. Strange he didn't think that was a different situation in 2018. And then he changed his reasoning again just now, saying his old statements don't apply because Harry Reid changed the filibuster rules back in 2013, even though that didn't bother Graham in 2016 or 2018. Oh, and also Chuck Schumer and the Democrats tried to destroy Brett Kavanaugh. That's why Graham's supporting Trump. Except that 2018 clip was recorded on October 3, a week after Brett Kavanaugh's hearing. And Kavanaugh's treatment didn't seem to bother Graham too much then.
Put a mask on. So, what happens next? Can we expect the president to announce his choice within a few days? Yes, we can. He's indicated it will probably be a woman. The most buzz currently around appeals court judge Amy Coney Barrett, who met with the president on Monday. There's also a bit of buzz as well about Barbara Lagoa, who has a meeting with the president on Friday. Either way, Mitch McConnell maintains the American people elected a Republican Senate majority in 2016 and 2018 because they expect them to support whoever this president nominates.
We're going to keep our word once again. We're going to vote on this nomination on this floor.
And he says that vote will be this year, but will it be before the election on November 3 or after it in the so-called lame duck session before the new Senate sits for the first time on the 3rd of January? Well, the Democrat Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says it should be neither of the above.
By every modicum of decency and honor, Leader McConnell and the Republican Senate majority have no right to fill it. No right.
As with all things, it will come down to whether the votes are there or not. This Senate has 53 Republicans and 45 Democrats, with 2 independents who vote as Democrats. A 50-50 tie would be broken by the casting of the vote of Vice President Mike Pence. So that means in order to either prevent some kind of procedural vote or ultimately a final confirmation vote, Democrats need to convince 4 Republican senators to cross the aisle. So far, just 2 have broken ranks. Moderate Republican Susan Collins, who's facing a tough re-election up in Maine, and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. Both of them say they will oppose a vote in this Congress. Utah's Senator Mitt Romney, though, today saying that he will support a floor vote, while other Republicans who are under pressure because of tight races in November, including Cory Gardner in Colorado, are standing by Mitch McConnell's timeline for a vote. There is one final possible wrinkle, though, that could affect Mitch McConnell's plans. The Senate election in Arizona in early November is a special election. Republican Senator Martha McSally was appointed to replace the late John McCain. And if Democrat Mark Kelly wins, and he looks like he probably will, he could be seated on November the 30th, possibly in time for a final Supreme Court vote. Oh, and by the way, Cindy McCain just endorsed Joe Biden, giving Democrats a boost in Arizona as well, Chad.
Don't forget Chuck Grassley, because in July he said he would not hold a hearing because that's what he promised people in 2016. Now, that doesn't mean he won't vote for the nominated justice, of course, but it does suggest he could potentially be gettable for the Democrats. So that would make a possible 3 out of 4 defections. Still not enough for the Democrats, but if the Republicans rush this too much, Who knows? Remember, since 1975, the average nomination has taken 70 days. It's taken 40 days just to hold a hearing on average, but there are only 42 days left till the election, when things could get even more complicated if Biden wins. So the pressure is on to rush the process, but not rush it so much that they spook for potential defectors. Admittedly, that can be done. Ginsburg herself was confirmed in 42 days. They just need to be careful, especially since early polls suggest 51% of people don't want Trump appointing a justice before next year. Everyone's going to be watching those polls very closely.
Sure will. Now, in a moment, we're going to talk to Justice Ginsburg's former law clerk about what it was like to work with her on the Supreme Court. But first, a bit more about what made Ruth Bader Ginsburg such a legendary figure long before she ever reached the bench. More than 45 years ago, long before she became a popular culture icon or the subject of films, books, documentaries, TV satire and countless internet memes, before there even was an internet, 20 years before she became a Supreme Court Justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg argued a series of cases before the United States Supreme Court that changed the way American women were treated by the law, their employers and society. As director of the Women's Rights Project at the American Civil Liberties Union, Ginsburg won 5 of 6 cases she presented to the Supreme Court during the 1970s, including the landmark Frontero v. Richardson, where Ginsburg successfully argued female Army Lieutenant Sharon Frontero was entitled to the same housing, health and other benefits for her spouse as a male service member, proving a husband could be a dependent and a wife could be the main breadwinner.
I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask of our brethren is that they take their feet off our necks.
Those words have echoed through the decades. Ginsburg's overarching mission to persuade what was still an all-male Supreme Court that the 14th Amendment's guarantee of equal protection that had been used successfully to combat racial discrimination in the Civil Rights era applied to sex discrimination as well. In a number of cases, including Weinberger v. Weisenfeld in 1975, the plaintiff was a man. Ginsburg argued Stephen Weisenfeld, whose wife had died in childbirth, was entitled to survivor benefit so he could care for their baby boy. Men could be carers, and again, Ginsburg prevailed. In 1980, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was made a judge on the Court of Appeals for the DC Circuit by President Jimmy Carter. 13 years later, she was nominated by another Democrat, President Bill Clinton, to the US Supreme Court. And in keeping with his third-way approach to politics, he hailed his nominee as a unifier.
In her pioneering work in behalf of the women of this country, she has compiled a truly historic record of achievement in the finest traditions of American law and citizenship.
After bitter battles, including the failed confirmation of Conservative Robert Bork and the successful confirmation of Clarence Thomas despite sexual harassment claims, Senate Judiciary Committee Chair Joe Biden seemed relieved to have a respected and uncontentious nominee who hardly rated a mention in the newspaper.
And I literally thought I picked up yesterday's edition.
And the praise from ranking Republican Orrin Hatch was also striking.
Judge Ginsburg's ability, character, intellect and temperament to serve on the Supreme Court are not, in my mind, in question. I don't have any doubts at all about that.
Ginsburg sailed through the process with a final vote of 96-3 and became just the second woman to sit on America's highest court alongside Justice Sandra Day O'Connor.
She defied labels like liberal and conservative, just as she did in her hearing before the Senate, to earn a reputation for something else altogether: excellence.
3 years after reaching the court, Ginsburg authored the majority verdict in a watershed gender equality ruling, the case of the United States v. Virginia, requiring the state-funded Virginia Military Institute to accept women for admission. They could have physical requirements, but not gender ones. Arguably, though, Ginsburg had just as much influence in forceful dissent of majority verdicts. The Supreme Court ruled against compensation to Lilly Ledbetter, a woman who'd been underpaid by her employer compared to her male contemporaries. In 2007, as the only woman on the court, Ginsburg was blistering in dissent, writing, "The court does not comprehend or is indifferent to the insidious way in which women can be victims of pay discrimination." Ginsburg's dissent helped ensure 2 years later the next Democratic President, Barack Obama, would make it his first order of business to sign into law the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Restoration Act.
It is upholding one of this nation's founding principles, that we are all created equal and each deserve a chance to pursue our own version of happiness.
Obama's term would see another 2 women appointed to sit alongside Ginsburg on the Supreme Court, and historic rulings including marriage equality. As Obama's term neared its end, Ginsburg, now in her 80s and having survived 2 bouts with cancer, resisted intense pressure to retire, which could have allowed Obama to appoint her successor.
I think I should do this job as long as I can do it full steam. And when I begin to slow down, I think I will know. It hasn't happened yet.
The unexpected election of Donald Trump in 2016 had Liberals hoping Ginsburg would live long enough to see another Democrat elected to the White House, but in the end that wasn't to be. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's confirmation in 1993 may have been uncontroversial and collegial, certainly by today's standards. It's already very clear her successor, whoever that may ultimately be, will not be so lucky. Well, joining us now is Lisa Beatty Frelinghuysen, who was Justice Ginsburg's law clerk in the late 1990s. Lisa, welcome to Planet America.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
How would you explain Justice Ginsburg's significance legally as well as socially and culturally?
I mean, she's the one in our country who's really responsible for establishing gender equality before the law. And that, you know, she did that by bringing case after case as an advocate. That alone is just a tremendous and phenomenal legacy. And I think to see that dedication and commitment and hard work and that strategic thinking in terms of how best to do that is really exciting for young people. Some of her dissents toward the end were so powerful and really have inspired people to stand up and fight for things that they believe in. And, you know, I think that was one of her big messages, to stand up and fight.
We've heard a lot about Justice Ginsburg's extraordinary work ethic, burning the candles at both ends, working all through the night, every night. What was she like to work with from your point of view?
Oh, she was wonderful to work with. You know, she does have an incredible work ethic. She is a night owl. She's very respectful. It is, you know, it's all business at Chambers, though. There's nobody's really sitting around, you know, chewing the fat. It's a strict work environment. But I loved working with her and going into her chambers and talking with her about the cases. You know, I found her always respectful of other people's opinions on the cases.
Justice Ginsburg did strike up a fairly remarkable friendship, a very close friendship with the former Conservative Justice, the late Antonin Scalia. I'm wondering, what did that sort of friendship across ideological lines say to you about her personality?
Yeah, they had a wonderful relationship. I mean, seeing them together was always a lot of fun. They just sort of delighted in each other. And they, you know, would joke with each other about each other's views of the Constitution. I think it's wonderful. The Supreme Court is a place where everybody acts in very collegial, you know, cordial, respectful ways, despite difference of opinions. And that helps, I think, as they get through some really difficult and contentious decisions. I wish these days that we all did a little bit more of that.
It was only in the last decade or so of her life that Justice Ginsburg really became this kind of popular culture icon, particularly for young people on the internet. I'm wondering, how do you think she felt about that new notoriety?
I mean, you know, look, she was certainly, the essence of her personality was one that was much more reserved and thoughtful and scholarly and quiet. She was not somebody who sought the limelight ever. What I loved is seeing her embrace that. You know, she had fun with it. And she also took seriously her new role in inspiring the next generation She went on countless visits to schools, speaking engagements, interviews, in a way that most justices don't do, with the heavy workload of the court, the fact that she was 80 years old, she was, facing multiple rounds of cancer. She still made tremendous time to go to schools, to talk to people in all different generations about her work and the importance of it.
Lisa Beatty Frelinghuysen, many thanks indeed for your time.
Thank you.
Big, beautiful world.
Now, this week there have been a few words spoken about the Supreme Court by the left, namely this word. But we shouldn't forget the other federal courts as well. There's the appeals courts and the district courts. Now, the appeals court's the next level down from the Supreme Court. While there's about 7,000 cases filed per year in the Supreme Court, the appeals courts take care of about 50,000 cases a year. And district courts, well, they're the most basic federal courts. They take care of about 400,000 cases a year. So how's Trump been going with these guys? Well, Trump has had 146 district court confirmations so far, which isn't actually that big a deal. Obama had almost as many at this point in his presidency. W had more. And well, look at Jimmy Carter over there. Whew! 191 district court confirmations. You see, Carter was great at something. As for appeals court confirmations, Trump has had 53 of them so far. Now, that is a stack more than Obama had at the same stage. It's a lot more than W had, and it took the district court king himself, Jimmy Carter, to pit Trump out, and only just. And Trump's extra appeals court confirmations, what's that about? That reflects different priorities from the Senate. The time between nomination and confirmation has been slowly lengthening for district court appointees over time. It's now out to about 8 months. But for the Court of Appeals, now the Senate cannot get these guys confirmed fast enough. They used to take longer than district court confirmations because, well, they're the more important positions. But under Trump, Court of Appeals judges have been confirmed faster than they were even under Clinton. So where does this leave the courts? Well, in the district courts, the Democrats have just maintained a majority of judges, but that's not going to be for long because there's still a few vacancies waiting to be filled. Whereas in the appeals courts, you can see Trump already has more judges than Obama did after 8 years. He's seen a cracking pace with 0 vacancies waiting to be filled. And that's one reason why there are more Republican-appointed appeals court judges than Democrat-appointed ones. Noting well that when Trump took over, the Democrats had the edge, but there were plenty of vacancies. We'll come back to them. Importantly, Trump has flipped 3 of the 13 appeals courts from majority Democrat-appointed judges to majority Republican-appointed judges. So Republican-appointed judges now control 7 of the 13 appeals courts. That makes a huge difference. But obviously, it's the Supreme Court appointments that are Trump's most acknowledged legacy. Regardless of what we're talking about, though, we should say none of this is all of Trump's doing. He started off with 103 judicial vacancies, and that's a lot more than most presidents inherit. And there is a simple reason why.
I was shocked that former President Obama left so many vacancies and didn't try to fill those positions.
I'll tell you why. I was in charge of the of what we did the last 2 years of the Obama administration.
I will give you full credit for that. And by the way, take a bow. All right, that was a good line.
Sorry, what just happened then? Could you play that noise that Mitch McConnell just made?
And I will give you full credit.
Is that Mitch McConnell's laugh? He didn't even move. He's like Dr. Evil's broken ventriloquist dummy. Wow. But regardless of that soul-destroying cackle, Mitch McConnell is right. He made full use of Senate control for Obama's last 2 years. The opposition party also controlled the Senate for the last 2 years of Reagan, Clinton and W. Bush. But look at the difference in confirmation numbers. For district court nominations, first of all, whoa, and especially appeals court nominations. Wow. Mitch McConnell just would not let them get past him. And now he's been rewarded for all this. And that is the reason why the Democrats are spoiling for a fight. And it's also why Mitch McConnell is doing this.
And I will give
no more.
Big, beautiful world. Time now for a check of the poll position, and the average of national polls has tightened a little. Biden down 0.5 point this week, still leading by 6.5 points. Trump's numbers have barely moved, in fact. He hasn't hit 45% since way back in February.
But we're into the final stretch now, John. It is debate season, and in the town halls last week, we saw the best and the worst of Joe Biden.
Well, I tell you what bothered me, to tell you the truth. Maybe it's my Scranton roots, I don't know. But when you guys started talking on television about Biden, if he wins, will be the first person without a Ivy League degree to be elected president, I'm thinking, who the hell makes you think I have to have an Ivy League degree to be president? I really mean it. I found my backup. No, I'm not joking. I'm not joking. Like, guys like me, we're the first in my family to go to college. We are as good as anybody else. And guys like Trump, who inherited everything and squandered what they inherited, are the people that I've always had a problem with.
Yeah, Biden got some of his lunch bucket populism going there that Dems love so much. But on the other hand, who exactly is saying that Joe would be the first president to not go to an Ivy League college? No one has said that. There have been like 25 presidents who didn't go to Ivy League colleges. And that pretend offence and an accusation that no one has levelled reminds me of how Biden used to say this all the time.
I know I'm called middle-class Joe. In Washington, that's not meant as a compliment. It means you're not sophisticated.
No one calls you middle-class Joe except you, Joe. And by the way, that bit about Biden being the first in his family who went to college is also a lie. Biden admitted that himself back in 1987 when he got caught for plagiarising Neil Kinnock, saying that he was the first in his family to go to college. Biden admitted that people in his mother's family had gone to college. So, John, the combination of disingenuous false modesty and fabulism, recycling the precise plagiarised lie he'd already been busted for back in 1987, that is the kind of thing that Biden should probably watch out for, I'd say.
That is the kind of thing that could get him elected president as well, Chad. And that's it for another trip to Planet America. We'll be back at the same time next week to look at the first presidential debate in Cleveland, Ohio.
If you want to hear more chat about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I have an emergency podcast out now, right there. We're going to have a fireside chat on Friday night on ABC News and News Radio. See you there.
Good night.